Thank you for asking me to do this today. It is a real privilege. I've listened to some other people's talks on why I'm a Christian and trying to prepare for this over the years that have been done before. And they're all very, very different and very, very interesting. And a few of them have voiced the same idea which I'm going to say, which is that for me, the question is more about why I'm still a Christian. I was only 12 years old when I made a clear and conscious decision to follow what I understood to be the right way for my life. It was both a cerebral and emotional decision, a real and definite conscious understanding of what that for me I thought meant. I'd been attending a small but vibrant gospel hall in the same road in which I lived since the age of 4. And this Sunday school and brethren-based church gave me a sense of family, of guidance and wholesomeness, I suppose. I was baptised there. They practiced total immersion baptism as we do. In many ways, what I studied and learned there set me up for a life of belief in the way. From early on, we were given a serious vision of discipleship, sacrifice, mission, holiness, and evangelism. And I grew up on stories of supported missionaries who gave up everything to save lives in Africa. Noble work, of that there was no doubt. It was inspiring. It made Christianity feel costly. There was a strong emphasis on holiness and saving souls. But something was missing. We were taught how to pour ourselves out, but not always how to be human. We knew how to spend our lives, but not always how to live them. I understand now that the early followers of Jesus were known as followers of the way, and not Christians for some time, and I think I prefer that. We had a vibrant and very musical young people's group, which attracted many young people to our Sunday sessions, as they were called. And these were after the 3 other services you attended all day on Sunday, and this is where the fun began. So this is where budding musicians would come and share their latest songs. Graham Hendrick came to our church as a friend, and that was in his very early days before he became a great inspirational songwriter and leader that he is now. Our youth group produced a musical play. It was called Sitting on the Fence, which we toured around the country performing. They were brilliant, happy days, as I remember. And that's why I love what we have here in this place for young people. Because nurturing that talent is such a good thing to do, because you just never know where it will lead. Many of you know that music still plays a very important part in my life, and I think my choir, the 50 choir, which many of you have been good enough to support, brings joy to many lives. Well, I worked each summer at Christian conference centres around the country, and I married the superintendent of the Sunday schools at Spain. The people around me were solid believers. The elders, women, wore hats, and the men preached, but not the women. But this was a time in the 60s and the 70s, and life was buzzing all around with hope and change. A little bit about where I began. My parents had me late in their lives. They had both served in the Second World War, Mum in the Women's Royal Air Force and Dad in the Royal Marines for the duration of that war, marrying at the very end. I think the war damaged them in ways that I can only imagine. To have me late in life, I think, was really an encumbrance. They didn't really have the energy to enjoy. They both died very young, and I have lived over 50 years without them in my life, and can only guess what an adult relationship with them both might have been like, and that's regret. When my dad died, I remember a woman elder from the church who I greatly respected came to see my mum. and I had hoped this might help her in her grief-stricken state. But it was awful. She was almost detached from her mother's sadness and determined to push her Christian agenda, so insensitive and not at all empathetic. I was so struck by her and the other elders' attitudes to the suffering others that I was moved to write a poem. And recently I found it when I was cleaning out the loft. And those of you who do know me will know that words mean a great deal to me, and I often find resonance and understanding in poetry and wise words. And I often share what I find on our church Facebook page. So, I'd like to read this poem that I wrote back when I was a young girl, having just lost my dad and watching my mum disintegrate before my helpless eyes. And it's called Loneliness. Typed on an old typewriter. There's a church in the road where I live. I would go, but there's nothing to give. Well, I've been here 20 years. It's only now I shed tears. For now, I'm alone and so lonely. He died 2 years ago tomorrow. It was numb, but now it's pain and sorrow. I phoned the Samaritans at first. It might get better. It got worse. For now I'm empty and so lonely. I've built a shell around myself. A painted smile disguises health. The books I read, the only way to help me through the day. The house is cold and lonely. A lady from the church came to see me when he died. She started quoting verses from the Bible while I cried. We only lived for each other, I said. Live for Jesus, your husband's dead. Why did he die? No answer. With Bible in hand, I see them as they go. They did corporately again. I wonder if they know loneliness, the waking pain of never feeling love again. It's so quiet when you're alone. Now, isn't the church full of kindness and good where grief and mourning can be understood? Perhaps I should go there one day, and I would if there was some way I could walk in on my own. Now, that isn't the end of that story, because a few years later, I met the woman elder in Markingtown Centre where I lived. She stopped me and held my hands and begged me to forgive her for what she had said to my mum when she visited in pastoral capacity. You see, her own husband had recently died. Now I know, I really know, how terrible the loss is and how your mum must have been feeling, she said. What I said to her cannot have helped her at all, and I'm so sorry. But now I know for myself what she really felt like. So, I wanted to share with you what I found many years later, and after having so many disappointing experiences from Christian friends, when tragedy has fallen on my life, as it has on many occasions. I wanted to share with you what I now know. Now I want to show you this from a book I have called The Missing Piece by Chris Whittington. One slide, please. So this is from Bob Dylan. There's a crack in everything. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And Leonard Cohen's striking lyrics help remind us that we don't need to escape from our humanness in order to find healing and enlightenment. Quite the opposite. God in Christ meets us in our brokenness, in our failures and our wounds, and transforms them into doorways of light. Most of us, to one extent or another, are deeply conditioned to hide from our vulnerabilities and brokenness. Faced with pain and apparent failure, we routinely tell ourselves painful stories about ourselves, feeding deep feelings of shame. All too quickly we judge ourselves for simply being human. But it is precisely in our humanness, our vulnerability, our woundedness, that we are shown how God enfolds and encloses us in His infinite loving embrace. And it is at these points of pain and self-judgment that the support of a loving Baptist community is invaluable. And I think that was what my mum needed, and what I also needed is to be held through it all, because some words can really help the pain. That's empathy. And I know that my understanding of Jesus is that He was with people who really needed Him, and that He came alongside them in their trouble and comforted them. That's why I'm attracted to His teachings and His life's example, fully human and able to know that place of pain we might be in. I don't think it's ever about becoming impressive, and it's about giving your life away in love, trying, however imperfectly, to align your life with the kingdom of God, seeking justice, loving mercy, bearing witness to one another, and being human. But the reading I chose from Galatians is one that has stuck with me since reading those simple words from Galatians 2:20. The Son of God, who loved me and gave Himself for me. Now these words were on the front wall of that little chapel that I went to. And if you went there 3 times a day, you read it a lot. I often wondered why those words. But I think that however much we try to be holy or perfect, this is the crux of the message. It's about loving and giving. Now, right now, I don't like what's become of this populist Christian nationalism movement. It annoys me, I'll be honest with you, and I don't associate myself with any of that dogma, which is why I find it difficult to use the words Christian and evangelical anymore, because they're being hijacked by right-wing chancellors and corrupt power-hungry people. So I still prefer a follower of the way of Jesus to be my preferred life pathway. And I believe that God is still at work in this wounded world, drawing all things toward their renewal in Christ. But I'm on a journey in my faith, and I don't believe the things I thought I did when I was 12 years old. I'm finding out new and more relevant and progressive ideas as I move in my journey of faith. Well, my family, husband and 2 children, back years ago, moved to various other churches over the years as we moved house and so on. And I spent some time in the house church movement. I don't know if anyone's heard of the house church movement. It was a big movement many years ago. And this was a kind of reaction to people meeting in churches that tend to be in small halls and houses, so it's very different. It's a charismatic space where the language changed, but the intensity stayed, and revival was always just around the corner. Until I realised that it was a patriarchal and legalistic environment in which I was wholly unsuited. That's not been a surprise years ago. And then a lovely CLE church was next on the list, and my children enjoyed the friendship and fun there. I'd like to say something about the women in my life, because this is important. I'm so grateful for wise and helpful women who have come into my life over the years, as I suppose substitute mother figures. And I should really talk about that, because it is amazing to me that when I had no help, guidance and support from parents, I had first Mary, my neighbour next door, but one, who looked after both me and my children when my husband worked long hours and calamities often befall small children. This wise Irish Catholic woman was always there for me. I'd achieved a first class honours English degree, and as my teaching career took off, Mary and her family were often able to look after the children for me while I worked in a busy senior management and then deputy head post in college. And then there was Margaret from work, who saw me through the sad breakup of my marriage, and her wise words live with me always. I'm so grateful that I have a good relationship with my former husband and that my amazing children are solid, wonderful people. And then there was Maureen and Phil, and some of you may remember her from this church. I loved Maureen, and I know she loved me. She was such a gifted and knowledgeable woman, both in the arts and creatively as well. All these women used to say I was like their adopted daughter. I never ever asked for that. But see, it just happened because women listened and cared and drew alongside me and were there for me, and there was love. Now, when we were 50 years old, Mike and I married, and many of you know my lovely Mike. We share our wedding anniversary with Debbie and Paul Hamilton from this church, and we'll always remember that because they got the church and beat us to it. So we got married at the lawn. But we have bumped into them on our wedding anniversaries in the same restaurants around here, which is quite fun. We have between us 6 grandchildren and a dog called Dave. Again, I'm so grateful to have Mike in my life. I think often the kingdom of God comes not through what doesn't, but through what is given, again and again, in love. And beneath all of this is grace. I want to share a prayer with you, which I guess reflects some of my life philosophy at the moment. My thoughts about God now and the journey I'm still on. I don't think I'll ever stop asking questions because my faith has to work for me. It has to make sense in a progressive world and mean something new every day. So this one is called Doubting My Doubts. And it's written by Reverend David Tomlinson. I doubt that my doubts offend you, creator of curiosity and scepticism. Even when I question your existence or protest angrily at what I imagine in my confusion to be your reliability in the world. Or when I tell you that I might as well talk to the wall or walk off in a huff, you smile mercifully, comprehending in your compassion the good intention in my imperception. I think your heart must swell with pride when you find us creatures of dust audaciously employing the powers you bequeath on us, wondering, delving, doubting, speculating, interrogating, digging, probing, disbelieving, then believing again, then doubting some more. I wonder if atheism, for some people, is just another way to search for you, beyond the hardened arteries of religious dogma. Faith is not stultifying certitude, not an end to questioning. Faith is breathtaking honesty. Questions just begun. And finally, I'd just like to show you a little blessing, which has helped me. It's called A Blessing for All Times. In happy times, may you be grateful. In challenging times, may you be brave. In tedious times, may you find joy in the moment. And at all times, may you be assured that you are beloved.